Okay, so today we are starting X and Y intercepts. We've already calculated our Y-intercepts. Whenever we are in the form y equals mx plus b, your b value is just your Y-intercept. But I'm going to show you an easy way to find your X and Y-intercepts if you're in standard form. Because standard form, remember, that's one I said we don't like. You can't just look at the equation and find the x-intercept or the y-intercept or your slope, okay? But we're going to look at an easy way to find or calculate your intercepts. So the point at which the line intersects the x-axis is called the x-intercept. So look at this graph. Where does the line hit the x-axis? Look at the line. Where does the line hit the x-axis? At 8. But it's an ordered pair because points are ordered pairs. So how would I write that as an ordered pair? 8, 0. Okay, the point where it hits the y-axis is called the y-intercept. So go along the y-axis. Where does this hit the y-axis? Also at 8, and this is written as 0, 8, because x comes before y. So we just identified our x-intercept and our y-intercept. Your x-intercept is on the x-axis, your y-intercept is on the y-axis. Okay, that's how you look at a graph and determine your x and y-intercepts. You just go along the x-axis. Find where it hits the x-axis, that's your x-intercept. Go along the y-axis, where it hits the y-axis is your y-intercept. Write them as ordered pairs. Okay? So it's relatively easy from a graph. You just look at the graph. Okay? But we are going to look at equations today. To find an x-intercept of an equation, you are going to replace the y with 0 and solve for x. Now let's talk about why we can replace the y with 0. If I'm on the x-axis, do you go up or down at all? No. Otherwise, if you go up, you're no longer on the x-axis. So that's why the y value, or your vertical movement, is always 0 for your x-intercepts. All of your x-intercepts are going to be written as x, 0. Some number, 0. The y value must be 0 to be an x-intercept. Otherwise, you're not on the x-axis. Okay? So then we're going to follow the same process to find our y-intercept. But instead of replacing y with 0, we're going to replace x with 0. And solve for y. How am I going to write my y-intercepts? 0, y. All y-intercepts have to have an x value of 0. That's why I can replace x with 0 in the equation. All of your y-intercepts have to have an x value of 0. Otherwise, you're not on the y-axis. You move side to side. Okay? So, looking at this first one, let's find our x-intercept. So to find the x-intercept, we are going to replace what? Y with 0. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, and it's going to be 0 equals 3x plus 6. Now I need to solve for x. Draw your line through the equals and circle x. What am I going to do to get x by itself? Subtract 6. The 6 minus 6 goes away. What's 0 minus 6? Negative 6. Very good. So negative 6 equals 3x. Keep your x circled. What do I do next? Divide both sides by 3. So I get x equals what? Negative 2. Very good. So how do I write my x-intercept? What did we say? All of them are written as? Very good. Negative 2, comma, 0. That is your x-intercept. Then to find the Y-intercept. To find the Y-intercept, what are we going to do? Replace x with 0. So this is y equals 3 times 0 plus 6. Well, what is 3 times 0, guys? So y is 6. Good job. So how do I write that as an ordered pair? 0, 6. And that is your Y-intercept. Now, why is this useful, guys? Because when you are in standard form, yes, I know right now we're in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, but most of the ones we're going to do, you're going to be in standard form. How many points do you need to graph a line? If you only have 1 point, there's an infinite number of lines through 1 point. So you don't need 1 point, you need 2 points. So this is an easy way to graph a line. Find your x-intercept, find your y-intercept, plot them, then graph your line, and you are done. Okay? So first we're going to start by finding our intercepts. Then, on the back of this, we're going to find our intercepts and graph using those intercepts. Okay? So next one, to find my x-intercept, what do we do? Replace y with 0. So it's going to be 0 equals negative x plus 5. Solve this for x. What do I do? What do I do to get x by itself, guys? Subtract 5. Very good. What's 0 minus 5? Negative 5 equals, what's 5 minus 5? And then I'm left with negative x. X doesn't have a coefficient, so I can put an understood what there? 1. Keep your x circled. What do I do next? Divide by negative 1. Remember, when a number and a variable are glued together, that's multiplication, so the opposite is division. So the negative 1 over negative 1 cancels, and I get x equals 5. So how do I write my x-intercept? 5, 0. Now, guys, to save a little bit of time, if we are in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, what's my b? B is 5. So if my b is 5, what's your y-intercept?
5.
But we write our y-intercept as a point. 0, 5. Okay, so if you're in slope-intercept form, just look at your b value. And that's your y-intercept. And then you don't have to actually calculate your y-intercept. It's already given to you when you're in slope-intercept form. Okay? Do we have to calculate the x-intercept? Yeah, because when you're in slope-intercept form, it gives you the slope and the y-intercept. It doesn't give you the x-intercept. So there's no way around solving for x to find your x-intercept. But this is an easy way to quickly find your b, your y-intercept. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Let's find our y-intercept first. Y equals mx plus b. Are we in slope-intercept form? Y equals mx plus b. So what's my b?
Negative 8.
B is negative 8. So what's my y-intercept? But we write it as a point. 0, -8. Okay, now let's find our x-intercept. To find your x-intercept, you replace what? The y with 0. So I'm going to write 0 equals 1/2 x minus 8. Draw your line through the equals and circle x. What am I going to do to get x by itself? Add 8. Great job. 0 plus 8 is 8. So I get 8 equals 1/2 x. What do I do to get the 1/2 away? Divide by 1/2. Now remember, guys, we can type this in our calculator. 8 divided by a fraction. How do you put a fraction in the calculator? Alpha y equals enter. 1/2. If you do 8 divided by 1 divided by 2, you're going to get the wrong answer. It has to be 8 divided by a fraction of 1/2. And we get 16. So x is 16. So how do I write that as an ordered pair? 16, 0. Again, let's look at our commonalities between these. Both of my x-intercepts have what? 4. What value? The 0 is your y. Very good. Both of my y-intercepts have, but what's 0? X is 0. All x-intercepts have y of 0. All y-intercepts have x's that are 0. Okay? Let's look at this one. What's my b value? What's my y-intercept? So what's my y-intercept? 0, 2. Very good. Now let's find our x-intercept. When you find your x-intercept, you replace what? Y with 0. So 0 equals -4/3 x plus 2. Draw your line through the equals and circle x. What do I do to get x by itself? Subtract 2. And I get -2 equals -4/3 x. Keep your x circled. How do you get the -4/3 away? Divide by -4/3. So we get x equals, again, you can type this in your calculator, -2 divided by alpha y equals enter to put your fraction in, -4/3. And we get 3/2. Is it okay to have a decimal or a fraction of a y-intercept or an x-intercept? Yes, it's just not going to be super accurate when we graph it. Okay, so these 3 that we did were all in slope-intercept form. The next 3 we're going to do are going to be in standard form. Okay, so I can't just look at my equation in standard form and find my y-intercept because it's not in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, so to find my x-intercept, we replace what? Y with 0. So x minus 0 equals 2. Well, what's minus 0? Do you need to write a minus 0? What's 100 minus 0, guys? 100. So do you need to write a minus 0? Does subtracting 0 change your value? No. So just x equals 2. So what's my x-intercept then? 2, 0. To find my y-intercept, what are we going to do? Replace x with 0. So 0 minus y equals 2. This one we are going to have to do some work. Do I need the minus or the 0 in front? No. But is y by itself? No, there's a negative attached to it. So what am I going to do to get rid of that negative? What's my y's coefficient? -1. Very good. So how do I get the -1 away from my y? Divide by -1. So I get y equals -2. So what's my y-intercept? 0, -2. Very good. Okay, I'm going to start calling on y'all because we're not participating too much. Okay? So what am I going to do first, Ben, to find my x-intercept for number 5? Good job. What happens to my 2 times 0? What is 2 times 0, though? 0. So that just cancels out. So what am I going to do next to find x? Divide both sides by 3. And I get x equals what, Marissa? 4. Very good. So what's my x-intercept then, Alex? Hold on, my x-intercept. We just found x to be 4. So what's my x-intercept? 4 what? We write them as ordered pairs. Very good. Thank you. Dominic, what are we going to do to find our y-intercept? Very good. What happens to my 3 times 0, Yusra? And then what am I going to do to get y by itself? What's the y's coefficient? -2. So I'm dividing both sides by -2. So I get y equals -6. So Regina, what's my y-intercept? 0, -6. Very good. Do y'all think you can do number 6 on your own? Okay, do number 6 on your own. Okay, let's look. To find my x, I replace y with 0. So it's going to be 8x plus 10 times 0 equals -10. Well, what is 10 times 0? Okay, so I need x by itself. How do I get the x by itself? Divide both sides by 8. So the 8 over 8 cancel and I get x equals. Type this in your calculator and do math enter. And what do we get? -5 over 4. So my x-intercept is -5/4, comma 0. To find my y-intercept, you replace x with 0. So 8 times 0 plus 10y equals -10. Well, what's 8 times 0? So how do I get y by itself? I saw lots of this is 0. That's not 0. -10 divided by +10 is -1. So what's my y-intercept? 0, -1. Very good. Okay. So now we are going to find our intercepts to then graph our lines. Okay. So first one, find your x-intercept. What do I do? So I'm going to do x plus 0 equals 3. Well, do I need that plus 0? No. So I get x equals 3. So I'm going to go on my x-axis and put a dot at 3. 1, 2, 3. How would I write this x-intercept as an ordered pair? 3, 0. Okay, now I need to find my y-intercept. When you find your y-intercept, you replace x with 0. So 0 plus y equals 3. Well, do I need the 0? No, so I just get y equals 3. How would you write that as an ordered pair? 0, 3. So I'm going to go on my y-axis and put a dot at 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I have 2 points. Use something for a straight edge. Draw your line. Put arrows at the end. Use something for a straight edge. Your line must have arrows at the end because our line is going on forever. Do you see why this might be beneficial to know how to find your x and y intercepts? You don't have to solve the equation for y and start with your b, move with your m, your slope. Okay, it's another way to graph. Okay, let's look at number 8. I'm going to replace what? To find my x-intercept, I replace what? Y with 0, so I have negative 4x plus 5 times 0 equals 20. Well, do I need the 5 times 0? No. So how do I get x by itself? Divide by negative 4. So I get x equals, what's 20 divided by negative 4? How do I write that as an ordered pair? Negative 5, 0. Go on your x-axis, put a dot at negative 5, 0. Now to find your y-intercept, what do we replace? X with 0. Are we seeing how this is super repetitive, guys? We're doing the same thing every time. To find the x-intercept, replace y with 0. To find the y-intercept, replace x with 0. What happens with negative 4 times 0? So we don't need that. How do I get the 5 away from the y? So we get y equals 4. How do you write that as an ordered pair? So I'm going to go on my y-axis and put a dot at 4. And draw your line. Arrows at the end. Two more of these, guys. Okay. Number 9. How am I going to find my x-intercept? Replace y with 0. So I have 9x minus 15 times 0 equals 45. Well, what's 15 times 0? You don't need it, right? It's just 0. So how do I get x alone? Divide both sides by 9. And we get x equals 5. How do you write that as an ordered pair? 5, 0. Go on your x-axis, put a dot at 5. Then how am I going to find my y-intercept? Replace x with 0. Well, what's 9 times 0? 0. How do I get y by itself? Divide by negative 15. Be careful of your signs. The 15 has a minus in front of it. So I get y equals what? Negative 3. How do you write that as an ordered pair? Go on your y-axis and go down to negative 3. And draw your line. Okay, let's look at number 10. I want to find my x-intercept. How do I find my x? Make y 0. So 2x minus 0 equals 7. Do I need the minus 0? No, so cross out the minus 0. How do I get x by itself? By 2. Divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals 7 over 2. Guys, it's going to be kind of difficult to graph a fraction, so change that to a decimal. I know I always say don't use decimals, don't use decimals. But if this is a point, it's going to be kind of hard to graph that. So let's figure out what is that decimal. So 3.5 comma 0. So I'm going to go in between 3 and 4. And put a dot. When your intercepts are fractions or decimals, your graph is going to be less accurate. But that's okay. We won't normally have our X and Y intercepts be decimals if I'm asking you to graph it using your intercepts. Okay? Now let's find our Y-intercept. To find our Y-intercept, what do? Replace it with 0. So 2 times 0 minus y equals 7. Okay? So, what's 2 times 0? So I don't need that, but I need my y by itself. It has that negative with it. So if it's a negative, what's your coefficient? -1. So how do I get the -1 away from the y? Divide by -1, and we get y equals -7. How do you write that as an ordered pair? 0, -7. Go down to -7. And draw your line. Last time, guys, I stressed use your graphing calculator to help you graph. If you look, none of these equations say y equals. Your calculator only will graph if it says y equals. None of these say y equals. So you would have to first solve for y to graph on the calculator. Okay? So that's why we've not been graphing on our calculator to check ourselves. Okay? Good? Okay, now we are going to go on to our two special lines, our horizontal lines and vertical lines. Okay, horizontal lines and vertical lines. All vertical lines are written in the form x equals a, or x equals a number. Your a is where it hits the x-axis, or where the lines x intersect. Okay, so this is a vertical line. Where does it hit the x-axis? It's x equals 3. What does that mean? Every point on this line has an x value of 3. Does it say anything about what the y values are? No, y can literally be anything. Okay, do I have a point where y is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5? Y can be everything, anything. The only requirement, x must be 3. Can x be -1? No, there's no point over here where x is -1. Okay? Then for horizontal lines, y equals a. And it's where it hits the y-axis, your y-intercept. So where does this line hit the y-axis? 1. Y equals 1. What's your only requirement? Y must be 1. Does it say anything about the x values? No, x can be anything. Okay? So, there is an acronym to help us remember which one's our horizontal line, which one's our vertical line. We've already talked about this, I think the first day when we did slope. And I said we'd come back to it. Hoi, Vux. Okay? Hoi Vux is our acronym to help us remember these two special cases. Hoi Vux. What does that stand for? H is for horizontal. So all horizontal lines have a 0 slope. And the equation is y equals a number. So horizontal lines have a 0 slope and their equation is y equals a number. What do you think Vux stands for then? Vertical lines have what kind of slope? Undefined. Good job. Undefined slope. And how do we write their equations? X equals a number. You will hear me say hoi Vux a lot. Okay? Because if you know this acronym and what it stands for, these are like the easiest gimme questions because you don't really have to do any calculation. Okay? If you know that if your equation says y equals a number, it's going to be a horizontal line. If your equation is x equals a number, it's going to be a vertical line. If I have a horizontal line, I know the equation is y equals. If I have a vertical line, I know the equation is x equals. You need to know how to go both ways. If I give you the line, how to write the equation. If I give you the equation, how to graph the line. Okay? So we're going to start with given the graph. We're going to write the equation given the graph. So, is this a hoy or a vux? Is this a vertical line or a horizontal line? Vertical. So this is a vux. All vertical lines are written as x equals. How do I figure out the number? Well, where it hits the x-axis. Where does it hit the x-axis? There's your equation. Done. Do you see how this is easier than finding your b and calculating your slope? You just need to know all vertical lines are x equals. Where does it hit the x-axis? That's the value. Okay? Next, what kind of line is this? So this is a hoy. Hoys mean horizontal lines have a zero slope and are written as y equals. Well, how do I figure out the value? Where does it hit the y-axis? 3. Done. Okay, number 3. Is this a hoy or a vux? Hoy. It's a horizontal. Horizontal lines have a zero slope and they're written as y equals a number. Well, where does it hit the y-axis? -5. Okay, next, this is a vertical, so this is a vux. Vertical lines have an undefined slope and they're written as x equals a number. Well, where does it hit the x-axis? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, when they're on top of the axes, this is where we sometimes struggle. Do you see that this vertical line is on top of the y-axis? Okay, but it's a vertical line, so vertical lines are vux. We know all vertical lines have an undefined slope and they're written as x equals. So x equals. Where does this vertical line hit the x-axis? At the origin, so 0, at 0. Guys, do what I'm doing by writing hoy and vux every time, whether it's a vertical line or a horizontal line. It will help you. Okay? This is a horizontal line, so it's a hoy. Horizontal lines have a zero slope and are written as y equals. So y equals. Where does it hit the y-axis? At 2. Done. Good? Okay, now we're going to graph them. Same as we did on the front, right? If it's a hoy or a vux. So this says y equals. If it's a y equals, is that a hoy or a vux? That's a hoy. Hoy. I was writing horizontal. Hoy. So that means it's going to be a horizontal line. So it says y equals 5, so I'm going to go on the y-axis to 5. Put a dot. Since it's a hoy, it is a horizontal line. So draw your horizontal line with arrows at the ends. Next one. Is this a hoy or a vux? And guys, how do we know we have a special case? This one only has one variable. This equation only has one variable. Only one variable. So if you ever have an equation that only has one variable, it's either a hoy or a vux. That's how you know you have a special case. So I'm going to go to the x-axis and put a dot at -1. Am I going to do a vertical or horizontal line through that point? Vertical because it's a vux. meaning it's a vertical line. Number 9, is this a Hoy or a Vux? Vux, because it says x equals. So go to the x-axis and put a dot at 3. 1, 2, 3. What's the V stand for in Vux? Vertical. Number 9, is this a Hoy or a Vux? Hoy. So I'm going to go on my y-axis and put a dot at -2. If it's a Hoy, how am I going to graph my line? Horizontal. Hoy. H stands for horizontal. Okay, I want y'all to do 11 and 12 on your own really quick. Do 11 and 12 on your own. Okay, is number 11 a Hoy or a Vux, Leo?
It's a Hoy.
It's a Hoy because it says y equals. Very good. So I'm going to go on my y-axis to 4. And how am I going to draw that line then, Leo?
Horizontally.
Horizontal line. Great job. Is number 12 a Hoy or a Vux, Marissa? A Vux. So I'm going to go on my x-axis to -7. Put a dot. What kind of line am I then going to draw through that point, Marissa? Vertical line. Great job. Again, how do you know you have a special case? If there's only one variable in the equation. Okay, if there's only one variable in the equation, you have a special case. Okay? Now we are going to identify our slopes from our special cases. Same thing. Identify if it's a Hoy or a Vux. Your Hoy and your Vux are going to help you. Okay? So this first one, is this a Hoy or a Vux? Hoy. How do I know it's a Hoy? It says y equals a number. That's what the y stands for in Hoy. Y equals a number. So what's the slope of this line? Horizontal lines have a slope of 0. So m is 0. Is number 14 a Hoy or a Vux, Heather? Vux, very good. Vertical lines have what kind of slope, Heather? What's the U stand for? Undefined, very good. Guys, having a slope of 0 and having a slope of undefined is not the same, remember? 0, undefined. Not possible. This means you have no slope. This is a slope of 0. 0 is a number. Undefined means not possible. You can't have a slope. Okay? Number 15. Is this a Hoy or a Vux? Syra? It's a Vux. Very good. So what is my slope? Undefined. Very good. Okay. Which axis is y equals -1 parallel to? So, let's think. Y equals -1. Is that a Hoy or a Vux? That's a Hoy. So that's a horizontal line. Okay, what is my horizontal axis? The x-axis. So it's parallel to the x-axis. Okay, x equals 4. Is that a Hoy or a Vux? Vux. So what's your vertical axis? The y-axis. Good? Okay, last one. How do these two graphs differ? Y equals 3 and y equals 3x. They look super similar, right? This one, though, doesn't have the x. So this one only has one variable, meaning it is one of our special cases. So if it only has one variable, it's a special case. Is this a Hoy or a Vux? ahoy, because it says y equals. So I'm going to go on my y-axis and put a dot at 3. If it's ahoy, what kind of line is that? Horizontal. Very good. Okay, next one. Y equals 3x. What is my m? 3. And for graphing purposes, remember we always want to write it as a fraction, so I see my rise and I see my run. Okay, what is my b? Do I have a plus number out to the side? No, so what's my b? 0. So I'm going to begin at 0, because we always begin with b. Begin with your y-intercept, and then I always move up. If it's a positive, I go to the right. So up 3, right 1. What's the opposite of up to the right? Down 3, left 1. And draw your line. Okay, so how do they differ? This first one has a slope of what? Yep, so y equals 3. Wait, has a slope what? If it's ahoy, it has a slope of 0. And a y-intercept of what? Where does it hit the y-axis? Where does it hit the y-axis? Go up and down the y-axis. Where's it hitting the y-axis? At what? 3. And y-intercept of 3. Then my next one has a y equals 3x, has a slope of what? What's my m? 3. And a y-intercept of what? 0. So they're flip-flopped. This one has a slope of 0 and a y-intercept of 3. This one has a slope of 3 and a y-intercept of 0. They're flip-flopped. Do they give you the same graph? No, because they're not the same equations. Okay, if they're not the same equations, they're not going to give you the same graph. Okay, again, you need to remember Hoy-Vux. Were we able to get through these last 2 pages of notes super, super quick, just knowing Hoy-Vux? Yes, if you remember it, these are like the easiest problems ever. If you don't, they're super confusing. Okay, we all good? Okay, so